Hey everybody, welcome to the video. Breaking news coming out of the Venezuela conflict. It looks like an oil tanker has been seized. And in this video, we'll be breaking down what may have seized it. It looks like the U.S. Coast Guard may have been leading the operation, but we know things have gotten steamy off the coast of Venezuela. So I'll be walking you through the assets involved and how this operation likely went down. Now, let's just dive right into it. So if we look at what happened December 8th through the 9th, this is a very intense campaign that is now using the Northrop Grumman MQ-4C Triton drone. This is a very advanced drone, a drone that I like to call the spy drone. So when you look at the MQ-4, it's really a drone that is built for reconnaissance, built to go out there and spot little tiny dots in the ocean. So we thought as of a couple days ago that this was just spotting narco boats, basically the Maduro regime in Venezuela shipping fentanyl and cocaine up north to the United States. So this is what I thought. Likely this thing was just spotting those narco boats. If you look at this drone, it's massive. So the wingspan is actually wider than a 737, which is just kind of awesome. So the drone itself is built to be a workhorse when it comes to intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Just a beautiful looking aircraft. We know, doesn't have a pilot, but besides that, beautiful. But this drone now we know was spotting other things. It was spotting vessels. And again, what is the flow of oil for the Maduro regime? It's the lifeblood of the regime. So that regime supposedly connected to the cartel of the Suns, basically a cartel now having its own military, which is something that we haven't seen before. So the regime is fueled by oil, and by refining the Venezuelan oil, it basically is the lifeblood of the cartels and the regime in Venezuela. So now we know the MQ-4C Triton was not only spotting narco vessels, this thing was up there with its jet power spotting bigger vessels, large, extremely large vessels. And speaking of that, these are very large crude carrier vessels. They're called VLCCs. So as you can see, this is similar to what this thing is going to look like. I mean, it's a beast of a boat. So that's a technical term, beast of a boat. But if you look at the operation going down now, they're actually seizing large vessels, large tankers, which is taking this conflict to a whole new level. So I'm going to break down for you likely how this went down, how it was taken down, and where we go from here. So it looks like this happened just about an hour or so ago of this video being released, but it was a high-stakes execution in the Maritime regime. So very complicated, very complex. We've got the USS Ford, which is a super carrier in the area, which is just insane. But it looks like this was seized approximately 50 nautical miles off the coast of Venezuela in the Caribbean Sea. So the fact that it was seized so close to the coast tells me there were a lot of different military operations going down to make this happen. So the Coast Guard might have potentially been leading the operation, but when it comes to being that close to Venezuela, you got to think about Venezuela's surface-to-air missiles, their anti-ship weapons. So the different ships involved were definitely put in harm's way, and they were using different countermeasures to stay safe, likely aided by that MQ-4C Triton. But this is a huge confrontation between U.S. forces and Venezuela, and this might be one of the biggest seizures that we've seen so far, and we'll likely see more. Now the precedent has been set that they are isolating Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's regime. The operation was said to be led by the U.S. Coast Guard, and it unfolded amidst a months-long buildup. If you've been watching my channel, this has been a months-long buildup. This is like, people might say a little bit of anticipation being built. This is a lot of anticipation being built. So you've heard of blue balls before. This is military blue balls that's happening right now. And we can call it that because this buildup is unprecedented. And now they are focusing on the lifeblood of the Maduro regime. So the interception, that ship has not been publicly named. So we don't know what the name of this ship is, but we do know that this was a massive ship that probably is carrying around 1 million barrels of oil, which is just huge. VLCCs are not small craft. So this ship here is providing hundreds of millions of dollars likely to the Venezuelan regime. And there's been similar tankers that have been turned around before. So Russia has ships, we call them the Russian ghost ships now, that have been turned around, they've been intercepted, and they've been pushed back away from Venezuela. But since this one was specifically owned by Venezuela, it's fully being seized, not just turned around, not just being redirected, but an entire seizure operation, which is just insane. So if we look and see kind of what's been going down, yep, breaking news, the oil tanker has been seized. And this just shows that Maduro now, he's kind of backed into a corner. And you don't know what's going to happen when you back a wolf into a corner. And this guy has been being pressured for an entire month. So as this new precedent is being set, we're basically seeing these reports rolling in right now as we speak. Serious escalation between the two countries. That makes sense. That's coming from Bloomberg. Again, the Department of War is now claiming the responsibility for the seizure, whether they teamed up with the Coast Guard. I'm sure there was different assets involved from both services. The Coast Guard, the U.S. Navy, the U.S. Air Force was likely involved as well. That MQ-4C Triton drone is owned by the Air Force. It's also owned by the Navy because it's really good in the maritime regime at spotting exactly what's going on. So the U.S. military apparatus going after this, guys, this is a multi-faceted approach. So combining naval dominance, aerial overwatch, and potentially even special operations, using precision to minimize any risks that could happen to U.S. forces and any spillover, like think about any civilians in the area, they have to be protected as well. But this is a physical seizure, the first one that we are hearing about, a physical seizure, and it likely deployed from cutters like the U.S. Coast Guard Valiant or Confidence that are patrolling the Caribbean. There's also a carrier strike group, the USS Ford Carrier Strike Group is in Puerto Rico. And so different ships from that unit could be a part of this as well. And then likely helicopter inserted special operations are a part of this as well with K9 units. They go in and they secure the deck. They're pros at this. They can go in and secure the deck without firing a shot. The crew on these, the VLCCs, the crew on these is likely somewhere between 25 to 30. And reports are coming in that it included Venezuelan and Chinese nationals. So again, the repercussions of this, the international repercussions of getting to this level can't be understated. So it's said so far that the detainment went relatively peacefully, and now they're probably going to question all the different members of the crew to see what the routes are, and then to see how they can do this more effectively moving forward. Not that they necessarily need that. It sounds like it went relatively smooth, but think about the tactical phase of this going down. So when I think of the tactical phase, I think, all right, where did it happen? So here we are. This is Caracas, Venezuela's coast here. And looks like, okay, probably a 50-mile band going out. So the seizure is going to happen somewhere in this region here. Again, in the heart of where Venezuela has been operating with impunity. So this happening this close is a huge black eye to Maduro. We haven't seen the U.S. Navy do this kind of an operation since the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, where the U.S. Navy set up a blockade to keep any ships going in and out of Cuba. But what was likely involved here, in addition to any of those Coast Guard ships, personally, I think the Coast Guard ships hung back a little further. When you get this close into Venezuela, you have to think about anti-ship weapons. And we've seen their Su-30s carrying anti-ship weapons. So this is an unprecedented move where the military would need to be involved. So to me, the tactical phase likely included many different assets. So we've seen so far the MQ-4C Triton drone, the operations of it going down. So this is likely about here. So outside of these barrier islands, if you look outside the barrier islands, so somewhere in this region here is where the MQ-4C drone was doing those operations. And it's just amazing for me to see this much air power being used to strike against the Venezuelan heart, to strike against their oil. And that's exactly what's going on. So something I want to mention are the littoral combat ships, the amphibious assault ships, and those could be carrying marine expeditionary units. And those assets formed a cordon a sanitary cordon around Venezuelan waters using their Aegis radar system that can be teamed up with a P-8 Poseidon. The P-8 Poseidon is a 737 that can also work hand in hand with the MQ-4. So now you have the ability of these different assets to hone in and target and triangulate not only where the ship is going to be right now, but where it is going to. So the tanker's approach was likely shadowed for days, and that's why we probably saw that MQ-4C Triton coming into the area yesterday to prepare for this seizure and get all the different intelligence to map out the ship, to securely know how to board this ship without putting the special operators in any more risk than they already are. So this allowed U.S. Southern Command to vector its forces appropriately into the region where the ship has been seized. So again, naval helicopters from the destroyers probably rolled in for close air support. Fast boats, you could have SEALs roping in from helicopters or just coming in on fast boats and boarding it that way as well, just in case any type of resistance had materialized. And now, if Maduro had any security forces like special operators from Venezuela on the ship, it sounds like it went down relatively peacefully, so maybe they surrendered, or this ship didn't have any of their elite forces on it. But will we see elite forces on these ships moving forward? I'd say that's a pretty safe bet that we would see that. So air power is also a big part of this because you can't just send in special operators into unknown waters without having the type of air power. So likely air power was a pivotal role. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were MQ-9 Reaper drones that could be around the ship as well. If there was any protecting ships that could be trying to flow in as well, those MQ-9s could take those down with Hellfires. Those are based out of Puerto Rico. They do an incredible job at intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. And one of the bigger things they can do is give real-time information to what is happening at the point of seizure. So the MQ-4 drone, to me, that's more of a larger, big picture. Hey, here's the sea, here's what's going on, and here's the other ships that could be a factor in this whole operation. And then the MQ-9 is that real-time, on-station, eyes in the sky that is giving real-time information to the different admirals that are in charge of this operation at U.S. Southcom. And then special operations forces, likely from Naval Special Warfare Group. SEAL Team 6 could have been involved in this as well, or SEAL Team 6 equivalents from Delta Force, and they are specialized in maritime counterterrorism operations just like this. So they could be embedded with other units as well. So think about embedding these special operators with Coast Guard forces, and these operators could have executed a visit, board, search, and seizure, a VBSS. If you're just coming to the channel, you're going to learn pretty quickly. I love acronyms. I'm a military guy, so how can I not love acronyms? But under the rules of engagement, those can they can use lethal force, whereas a Coast Guard might not be able to use lethal force. And if they didn't know who they were going to find aboard this ship, then that really points into the direction of have the ability to use overwhelming force with these special operators, just in case you run into something that you really, didn't expect to see on an oil tanker. But again, this is the lifeblood of the Venezuelan regime. So having the ability to go in and take these down this close to Venezuela is a whole new operation. But you could also think of C-130 gunships overhead, those C-130Js, special operations gunships from the Air Force. Those could be up there doing intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. But more than that, they have the firepower. So when you board a ship, you have to have the ability to protect those operators that are boarding. And those C-130s with those guns on them could definitely do that. But it looks like this was a bloodless outcome, which is great. And to me, that just represents the overwhelming asymmetry that the U.S. has when it comes to Venezuela at this point. Venezuela's Navy crippled, their Air Force, it's basically in tatters. And now they've been choked off from their flow of money that could be even paying for some of these assets, which is huge. So again, sanctions have said that this ship is not allowed to operate, and now they're putting teeth behind these different sanctions, which is just something that we have not seen at all. So this is a maximum pressure strategy that's being built on this U.S. Southcom campaign. So this maximum pressure strategy, it's now not only impacting Venezuela, but it's also impacting China, because China is going to have operators on this ship. This is going to be something that China is very, very, I will say, they're going to be obscure about it. They're going to act like maybe it's not as important, but China gets a lot of its oil from Venezuela, which is huge. So there could be some potential blowback, potential Chinese retaliation, or even China making sure that Venezuela has the ability to get the Su-30s airborne, get the F-16s airborne to protect what they see as their national assets as well. So the coming weeks are going to tell us a lot about what happens in this situation. But I would think that at this point, Venezuela is going to ramp up their pressure when it comes to this whole chunk of ocean, when it comes to them protecting that lifeblood of the cartels. So again, U.S. naval assets, MQ-4C Triton, P-8 Poseidon, and then you've got the USS Ford, which is going to be operating in Puerto Rico, which is going to be just up here to the north. Again, them sending their different ships that are all connected with that Aegis combat system. The Aegis combat system talks to every aircraft and every ship in the vicinity, making sure everyone knows who's a friend, who's not a friend. And this strategy is basically building on that entire pressure campaign for Maduro. So now we've likely intertwined the special operators into this whole situation where now the special operators are going to be boarding ships. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a full naval blockade. To me, this is like a soft naval blockade that we're seeing in this region. I wouldn't be surprised with the MQ-4C Triton in the area, the P-8, that we now see a full naval blockade that basically exercises itself outside of these barrier islands here near the coast of Venezuela, and the pressure will continue to ramp up. I'll keep you guys posted as this develops. It looks like for now, the ship is in the hands of special operators, and it's going to continue. So there probably will be more. I'll keep you guys posted as this develops. We don't know if kinetic strikes are going to happen in this campaign. So far, there's been no land-based kinetic strikes. They're only on the ships, they're only on the narco vessels, not on the actual large oil tankers, obviously. Those are going to be more of a seizure type situation, which is what we saw today. And I'll keep you posted as we see what naval air power teamed up with U.S. air power does in this region. It's going to get wild, and I'll keep you posted as this develops. So follow me on Instagram, follow me on X. I'll keep you guys posted there. Would love to say hi to you over there. And then if you would, just watch this video right here. When you watch this video right here, it helps the channel grow exponentially, and that's basically the best compliment you can give me. So I'll see you on this video right here. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, signing off.